So hi, I'm Ross, the L&D Manager for Health and Wellbeing, and welcome to Green Cross Talking Heads, a chance for our experts to share thoughts surrounding various topics. Now, this time we're going to be talking about everything to do with risk. I'm delighted to be joined with our lead business psychologist, Ellis, and our Risk and Compliance Learning Development Manager, Tim. Welcome to both of you. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start off then. So what does risk mean to you? And who would like to start with that?
Oh, can I, please?
Right, you go for it, Tim. What does risk mean to you?
Simply put, risk to me is the possibility of something bad happening. It could be danger, it could be harm, it could be exposure to something, or it could be loss of property, etc. That's how I describe risk.
Okay, and is that from a risk and compliance perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. From my health and safety side.
Okay, Ellis, from a psychology side, then for you, what's risk?
I do agree with a lot of what Tim has already said, and I view risks as hazards as well. And it can cause us harm, but also it can impact the optimum effectiveness of our organisation as well.
Oh, okay. So you talk about impact. So how can risk impact us then?
It can impact us cognitively, where we're distracted and we could potentially lose productivity. Perhaps emotionally, because if you've got that lack of safety, then that might cause fear, stress, anxiety. Physically, if there's a lack of safety, then there's that risk of harm, injury, death, sickness, absences, those sorts of things. And then sort of more long term, that could impact you financially as a company with the loss of the productivity, the sickness absences, and ultimately have a loss of earnings. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to note that it also impacts your reputation as an organisation. It damages that reputation and impacts your turnover, because you might lose staff and you lose talent. You might have higher sickness absences and also lose customers as a result of a risk.
Absolutely agree there, Ellis. Not managing risk for me. Yeah, you've mentioned the impact on colleagues and the culture. There's the legislative side as well. Companies that don't manage the risk are going to fall foul of the law. Up to 2 years in prison, could be served a prohibition notice by the HSE and closed down. It has a massive impact on morale. Unhappy workforces that are starting to try and actually hide that they're facing the risk and the consequence of that risk. There's the famous one of the guy who lost a finger, a fruit cocktail manufacturer. He buried the fact that actually he'd had the accident because he needed a job. But managing the risk to him was loss of his livelihood. So he didn't tell anyone.
That's quite an interesting point. He's talking about hiding that. And I know in another one of these, we're going to be talking about culture, because the fear of losing the job is then, stopping them from reporting that, which is then, well, actually, if you're not raising this risk, and it's a potential risk that can continue for other people as well. So we've looked at the results then. You started to talk about the fiscal results, Tim, and, a little bit about reputation. Is there any more results, when we talk about the psychological results of not managing risk, Alice?
I suppose it depends on the risk and also the organisation, because there are different hazards that can come from different types of workplaces. But kind of generally speaking, you're looking at things like the loss of productivity in your staff, potentially impacting them with their stress and poor mental health could be an impact. Burnout is a key topic as well to consider. People might be more likely to be off work through sickness absence, whether it is a result of the injury or illness caused, or perhaps because of the stress and the impact on your mental health. And long term, definitely that high turnover, I reckon, is one of the things that will certainly impact you. If you haven't managed that risk, people aren't going to stay in your organization. And I think that reputation is one of those other long-term factors that people need to be mindful of.
Then I suppose that becomes then another fiscal thing that you have to put into it, because if people are not staying, then you're going to have to get new employees, and then you're going to have to upskill them. You've got new starters, and it goes on and on, and it becomes a vicious circle, you know. And
financially,
and I know, but we all like talking about risk, because we talk lots about training and putting that kind of break glass in emergency. But it starts with looking at risk, doesn't it? It really starts with looking at risk. If you don't take that away, then you know, how you manage a risk isn't by having a physical or a mental health first aider or a fire warden. That doesn't help manage a risk. So, Tim, how do we manage a risk?
First of all, we need to assess what the risk is. We need to actually conduct a risk assessment. We need to get fully into there, engaged with our colleagues. So we need to be talking to our workforce. In terms of the risk assessment, we're obviously identifying the hazards, the things that can cause harm, that have the potential. But we need to clearly identify who it can harm and how they can be harmed. Part of that risk assessment process is then looking at what controls exist in the workforce already, and then deciding if we need to lower that risk rating, what controls we need to put in place. And it's making sure that those agreed controls are then communicated. We give our staff information, we give them instruction, we train them, and above all else, we supervise them to make sure those controls remain in place.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the things that you've mentioned, Tim, I would like to add that these policies, it's really important that they're clear and that they're accessible, because often I'm reviewing policies for organisations and they're really difficult to understand. And that's coming from my background. So, you know, you've got to think about accessibility for everybody, with both the policies actually and also those controls that you mentioned. Think equity, you know, people don't necessarily start at the same point. So we need to understand what are some of the barriers for people to being able to manage their risk, because it might be different, and often it is different for everybody. So enabling people to be able to manage their risks, and also communicating that very clearly and accessibly, so we're all singing off the same hymn sheet. And I'd also like to add to that, learn from mistakes. They're going to happen. Assess the data in your organisation, what you've already got, and if there are mistakes that happen, we need to learn from them. But of course, we need to make sure we're being proactive. So not waiting for things to go wrong and then learning from it, but trying to be proactive. And as you say, those risk assessments are absolutely vital. So communicate that, talk to your staff, and that communication is certainly key.
There's a big part in explaining the why to people. So part of that communication, really getting them to understand why this control's in place, or why I have to do it this way, and show them how to make the difference.
It's going beyond it's just a piece of paper, isn't it? Because a lot of people will say, oh, it's just, you know, here comes a job's worth, it's just something that I have to do. It's actually a living, breathing document, isn't it? Okay, so there you go. Final question then. So if we manage risk, okay, by putting all those processes in, as an individual, as an organisation, what can we actually achieve?
The list goes on.
Blue sky thinking here. Absolutely. Safer workplace. More productive.
Production.
Culturally stronger. Allows generation of ideas. Everything gets discussed. Everything comes up. No stupid suggestions. That place where you're able to communicate freely. World's your oyster. You look at some of the great organisations around the world, they all put safety right up there at the top.
And it makes their business more effective. So an effective business, you'll have more positive well-being within your staff. Tim mentioned earlier about morale. You know, if everybody knows what they're doing, everybody knows that they're safe, and they clearly understand it, and they have all the tools that they need to be able to manage their risk, then absolutely you're going to have an impact on your mental health and well-being. People are going to stay at the organization, and you're going to have better talent retention. And I do believe that that will have a knock-on effect to your customers or your clients or whatever your company is, because you will have trust and attraction from, you know, your workforce and also from your customer perspective.
Wow.
Alice, you mentioned reputation before.
Yeah.
With poor management of risk, it's the absolute opposite. Reputation builds, people want to work with the organization.
Yeah.
People want to buy from the organization. It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you very much both, Ellis and Tim, for talking and joining me and talking about risk. And thank you for watching Green Cross Global Talking Heads. See you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.